The subject come up about you doing some research at Georgia Tech about some of the older ways and remedies and all, and I had said, well, my dad was a fire talker. That's what they called him. What they would do is people would bring, infants up to 90-year-old people. If you had a burn anywhere, he's drawn it out of Terry, drawn it out of me, Tyler. What he would do, if this area got burned, he would go, and his breath would get hot and cold. And he was saying what I assumed to be Bible verses, because he's a very religious man. And when he get done, you'd be saying, no, wait a minute. And what he would do, he would take the pain away. It would still scab over and heal like Mother Nature wants you to, but you didn't have the pain of it anymore. An amusing true story. One night about 2:00 in the morning, Mr. Floyd Cantrell had a sawmill down here, and he brought his son, and he was 25, 30 years old, and he got burnt. He burned his eyes welding. My dad said, I don't know if I've never drawn it out of somebody's eyes. Mm-hmm. He said, but I'll try. And this guy was he was in so much pain. His brow and his face was, just wrenching pain. His eyes were just nearly black. And Daddy started. And he did one eye, done the other, did another eye, done another one. And in a few minutes, the counter boy said, I'd like to have a cup of coffee. And they talked a while. And his dad said, well, Floyd, you ready to go? Yeah. And I mean, to come in a physical and emotional wreck, I saw this. He also had the ability to stop blood. I was just a kid, probably 6, 8 years old, somewhere right in there. And Mother and Daddy was going to Gainesville, and back then there was nothing up here. You had to go down there and get anything. It was a real bad car wreck right there where 400 ends now, and 2 cars got all messed up. And a little girl, you could see, she was just looked like, I thought she was dead. And it looked like you took a 5-gallon bucket of blood and just threw all over everybody. My mother said, Howard, go. She knew what he was supposed to do. And my dad goes and has a little girl and lays his hand on that joint and starts and just keeps his head right up next to hers. And he's trying to calm her down and all that too. The ambulance come and got the girl and Dad. He goes into Hall County Hospital then, and the attendant, the emergency room doctor, my dad said, are you a believer? He said, yes, I am. My dad said, I'm giving her to you now. So he took his hands off, and the doctor took her, and an hour or two later, they come back out there and said, the doctor told him, said, Mr. Wilkins, you saved somebody's life. My dad was extremely religious. He never read but one book, and it was a Bible. He barely could read and write, wrote maybe 10 checks his whole life. Very, very humble man. And after that, he wouldn't do it again. When he left, he said, I'm not going to do that again.
Didn't you tell me that you could stop bleeding?
I can stop bleeding, I know about it. If you got somebody that's really bleeding real bad, come tell me about it. Time you get back to where they're at, they'll quit bleeding. I was working up at Cornett up there and worked up for a long time, and our boss, his girl had an operation. He come in there a day or two and he said they can't get the blood stopped on her. And I said, that blood will be stopped.
So you don't even have to be in the same place with the person?
No, sure done. So he went back, and the next day I asked him, I said, did her blood stop? He said, yeah. Said she ain't bleeding now at all.
That's wonderful.
That's amazing.
Did you know people with other gifts of healing?
I did. I had warts taken off of my fingers. I was going to cosmetology school, and they advised me to get the warts removed. I mentioned to a man that had a store there that I was going to have that done, and he said, well, sell them to me. I said, okay. And he gave me a penny, and he stood there and rubbed my fingers, just talking. Didn't say anything to me, but told me not to look at them. He said, just forget about them. 2 weeks later, I happened to think about them, and they were gone.
Had you tried other medicines to get rid of them?
Oh, compound W that you put on them, all that kind of stuff. And
It didn't work.
It did not work. Nothing that you could buy at a store worked. What he done, I do not know. What he said or done, other than rub my fingers.
Well, now didn't you tell me? I know you did mine. You like taking the warts and stuff off. You have to touch them.
Yeah, I have to rub them like this. The woman at church, she called it a wart. And I don't know if it was a wart or not, but it was a big red thing like that right there, and it kind of looked like a wart, but it was on her leg right here. There you go. And so she asked me would I take it off, and I said, yeah, I'll take it off. There you go, if I can. And so at a church, she said, just hang around there at a church. And there was still a big crowd out there. So I told her, I said, let me see that wart there you go. I said, I'm going to have to rub your leg now. But I said, don't think nothing about it. There you go. And so she had her dress on, she just pulled it up, and that thing was sticking up there like that right there, and it was just blood red as it could be. And I rubbed that dang thing, and I didn't never get to see her no more. And her old man come to church up there, and I asked him, I said, did that wart ever come off your wife's leg? And he said, yeah. I said, you couldn't even never tell it was there. And it was an awful looking thing. I mean, it was an awful looking thing. She was a good woman, and she was a religious woman, and I didn't know where she would really want me to do something like that.
Yeah.
I didn't mean nothing by it.
Sure.
I was just gonna help her with it, take it away, you know.
Yeah.
We was up there coon hunting one night, and he was trimming a wart off.
Off my finger right there with my
Finger or
knife.
finger
I was
there.
cutting it off. Yeah.
And I told him, I said, what you got? And he said, I got a wart. And I said, you want me to take it off? And he said, yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
took it off.
And he did. He
Yeah.
did. Yeah. And that thing, it had bothered me. I'd put my hand in my pocket and it'd catch and it'd start bleeding and dragging.
Yep.
It was aggravating as it could be. But
It sure was.
and the next time I thought about it, I looked down and it was gone.
It was gone.
It was gone.
That's exactly right.
That's
That's
right.
the way they do.
Yeah. I was down at Grandpa Garland's down there one time at Rydell on Sunday evening. And this car drove up. Nobody knew who it was. And this couple got out and they had a small kid with them. And they said, we know this may sound strange, but says we're hunting Jean Temples. So we've been to her house, and they said some of the kids said that they were down here and told us how to get here. So Jean told us, said, I'm Jean Temples, and she said, well, we've got a boy out here that's just totally eat up or poisoned oak, and we can't get rid of it. And said, we've been told you can get rid of it. She said, well, I can try. And she took that boy around behind the house. And I'm sure she probably had to touch him doing. I don't know what she done. No, but they left, and I never did hear. But they'd come from a long way and didn't even know her. Brought her kid to her, so these folks can do that.
Right.
Are there any other gifts you know of to heal any other things?
Oh yeah, one of the neighbors, thrush, people call it thrush now, but back then we called it thrush when baby's mouth would get coated and they couldn't take a bottle. My nephew was like that, and so my mom took the baby to this neighbor that he was the seventh son, and that is supposed to be a gift. And he took the child, and the next day the baby was able to take his bottle.
He stayed in a convalescent home up here for about 3 years, the last 3 years of life, and I hired my sister, who was a nurse, to go and watch my mother and daddy. And I said, look, whatever you're making as a nurse, I'm going to pay you, because 2 reasons. My sister is just so emotional. If she hadn't been there with her mother and daddy, she'd have blamed herself the rest of her life, you know. And I wanted somebody to attend my mother and daddy. In the morning that my dad we knew hospice had been with him 3 or 4 days checking him, and I felt the end was near. So I go up and I said, Dad, and he said, well, I'd like to have a cigarette. So I rolled him out front and he smoked. He died at 77 years old, and went outside and come back in. And I said, Dad, you've always told me to remind you about the gift. And I said, well, I don't know of anybody. And he said, well, you've got to find a female. So I go and find the little nurse's assistant, and I said, look, we've given my dad 2 shots of morphine or whatever it was, you know, to let him ease out. I said, he wants to tell you something. Take it very seriously. And what you will do, you will have the ability to be a talker, to draw fire, stop blood, remove warts. He'll tell you what your parameters are. And so I closed the door, and she talked, and I started back in, and she hugged my dad and kissed him, and she left crying. I went in crying, and my dad, it was kind of a unique experience because my dad he wasn't a big hugger. I mean, he dug Terry, and that's about it. And he said, you mind giving me a hug? So I just sat him on the lap, didn't weigh but about 90 pounds, hugged, and he was gone.
And would you say that it's as common as it used to be when you were growing up? Is it less common?
Less common. I think people look at it now as more devil worshiping than they do gift from God. I think people are more afraid of it and disbelieving in it. People used to believe in prayer, and they believed in the spiritual being, that it was God healed, and now I think they don't believe like they used to.
Do you think it's the older generation that still practices, or do you know of any people in younger generations that may have a gift, believe in this, practice this?
You know, I really hadn't thought of that, but probably it's a dying art is probably what it is. It's probably the older generation, probably much younger than my generation. They look at it as witchcraft, voodoo, something on that line. They don't believe in this. They just don't believe.
I just know my little corner of the world, I saw it work, and I saw the people, and years and years they would come back, and they'd bring kids, grandkids, or somebody get burned, they'd come straight and find Daddy. And Dr. Woodward was our neighbor, and he'd call and say, Howard, I'm sending you somebody. And he was a doctor, and he would say, when you get done, I'll put a lotion or something like that. And he, you know, when the doctor does that, you know. But it was very interesting. And of course, I was enamored with my dad, and he was my hero. And he had told me several times, now, if something happens, you know, if I'm in the midst of a heart attack, you find somebody, because this gift doesn't need to die here. And he's right, you know, because you never know when you might save. Well, he saved that little girl's life. I ain't no doubt in my mind. I mean, but it's just one of those things in the mountains, you know.